3 men vanished from a lighthouse, and the door was found locked from the inside. No bodies, no struggle, no note, no explanation. The lighthouse itself was untouched. The lamp was clean, the logbook was up to date, and the clock inside had simply stopped, frozen at a moment no one can explain. This happened on a tiny island in the North Atlantic, so remote and so dangerous that boats can only land there a handful of days each year. And the strangest part isn't that the men disappeared. It's what they left behind, and what that evidence seems to prove they did in their final hours, even though almost none of it makes sense. For over 125 years, lighthouse historians, investigators, and the British government itself have tried to explain the Flannan Isles lighthouse mystery. Nobody has succeeded. The Flannan Isles are a tiny cluster of uninhabited islands, 20 miles west of the Isle of Lewis in Scotland's Outer Hebrides. The largest of them, Flannan Moor, is barely the size of a few football fields, a slab of rock rising out of some of the most violent seas in the North Atlantic. In 1899, the Northern Lighthouse Board finished construction of a lighthouse on Flannan Moor, one of the most difficult and dangerous lighthouses ever built in Scotland. Materials had to be hauled up sheer cliffs using cranes bolted directly into the rock. 3 keepers were assigned to operate it on a rotation. James Ducat, the experienced principal keeper, Thomas Marshall, his assistant, and Donald MacArthur, who had stepped in temporarily to cover for another keeper who was ill. By December of 1900, the 3 men had been stationed on that rock for weeks, watching for the rare days calm enough for a supply boat to land. December 15th would be the last time anyone saw their light burning. On the night of December 15th, 1900, a steamer called the Archtor passed near the Flannan Isles during a fierce storm. Its captain later reported something troubling. The lighthouse was dark. No beam, no signal, nothing. He reported it once he reached port, but brutal weather meant no one could check on the island for another 11 days. On December 26th, the relief ship Hesperus finally approached Flannan Moor to deliver supplies and rotate in a new keeper. As they neared the landing, the crew noticed something wrong immediately. No flag was flying. No supply crates had been left out for collection, a basic signal the keepers always left if they couldn't meet the boat. No one was on the landing to greet them. The captain sounded the ship's horn, fired a flare into the sky. Nothing.
A crew member, Joseph Moore, was sent ashore alone to investigate. What he found inside that lighthouse would become one of the most enduring mysteries in maritime history. Lighthouse keeping in 1900 was one of the most isolating jobs in the British Empire. Keepers worked in total isolation for weeks at a time, maintaining strict rules. The light always had to be lit at dusk. Log entries had to be recorded every few hours, and critically, at least one keeper was required to remain inside the lighthouse at all times. No exceptions, regardless of weather. This rule existed for exactly the kind of danger Flannan Moor was known for. The island had only 2 safe landing points, and even those were frequently destroyed by storms that could send waves crashing more than 100 feet up the cliffs. Ducat, Marshall, and MacArthur
all knew this. Ducat in particular was a 15-year veteran of the service, known for being careful and by the book, which makes what investigators eventually pieced together even harder to explain.
Joseph Moore entered the lighthouse and called out. No answer. He found 2 of the 3 keepers' oilskin coats and boots missing from their hooks by the door. The 3rd set was still hanging exactly where it should be. Inside, the kitchen was orderly. Dishes were clean and put away. The beds were unmade, meaning the men had been up and working during the day, not asleep when whatever happened occurred. One chair near the kitchen table was found overturned on the floor. The lighthouse logbook contained entries up through the morning of December 15th, describing severe winds and rough seas, consistent with the storm the Arctur's crew had reported that same night. After that, the log simply stopped.
When investigators reached the island's west landing, the more exposed of the 2, they found devastation. A box used to store mooring ropes and equipment, normally secured well above the waterline, had been ripped open and emptied. A massive iron railing was bent completely out of shape. Ropes that should have been coiled and stored were found tangled more than 100 feet above the normal high tide line. The official investigation, led by Northern Lighthouse Board Superintendent Robert Muirhead, concluded this. 2 of the men had gone out to the West Landing during or after the storm, likely to secure equipment that was at risk, while the 3rd stayed behind, as the rules required. Then, while they were out there, something caught them completely off guard. Over 12 decades, several theories have tried to explain exactly what that something was. Theory 1, a rogue wave. The leading theory, and the one the official 1900 inquiry favored, is that a sudden, freak wave swept the 2 men off the landing while they worked to secure storm-damaged equipment. The 3rd keeper, seeing this happen or hearing it, may have rushed out himself to help, without stopping to put on his coat or boots, explaining the one missing pair that didn't match what Moore expected. This theory fits the physical damage at the landing perfectly. What it doesn't explain is why 3 experienced, rule-following keepers would all leave the lighthouse unmanned at the same time. Something Ducat, in 15 years of service, had never been known to do. Theory 2, foul play. Some early investigators considered whether one keeper may have harmed the other 2, then either fled or fallen into the sea himself. This theory has almost no supporting evidence. There were no signs of violence inside the lighthouse, and nothing in the keepers' personal histories suggested any conflict between them.
Theory 3, supernatural and sea legend. Within years of the disappearance, embellished retellings began to spread, claiming the keepers vanished mid-meal, or that a log entry described a crew member crying in fear of an approaching storm unlike any they'd seen before. It's important to be direct here. Those specific dramatic details were popularized by a 1912 poem, not the actual investigation records. The real inquiry found no evidence of an untouched meal or any panicked final entries. The legend grew larger than the facts. But strip away the folklore, and the real story underneath is unsettling enough on its own.
The official conclusion remained simple. The 2 men were almost certainly swept away by the sea while trying to secure equipment during or after a severe storm. The third likely went to help or to look for them and met the same fate. No bodies were ever recovered. No remains were ever found anywhere on the island or in the surrounding waters. The lighthouse was restocked, repaired, and relit within weeks. By January 1901, new keepers were already stationed on Elline Moor, required, like everyone after them, to follow the same rule that may have failed Ducott, Marshall, and MacArthur. Never leave the lighthouse unmanned, no matter what.
Here's what still doesn't sit right. The rogue wave theory explains the missing men. It does not explain why the entrance door to the lighthouse was found properly closed, not blown open, not damaged, simply shut, the way you'd leave it if you expected to be right back. It doesn't fully explain why a 15-year veteran who had never broken protocol once in his career would leave the light unmanned for the first and only time in his service, at the exact moment that decision would cost him everything. 2 men went outside into a storm that had already passed its worst point, according to the last log entry, and neither they nor the man who almost certainly went out after them were ever seen again. If a case like this, a sealed room, a missing crew, zero explanation after more than a century, pulls you in the way it pulled in investigators in 1900, subscribe. This channel exists for exactly these stories. And if vanishing crews are what get you, you need to see what happened aboard the Mary Celeste, a fully intact ship found drifting in 1872 with every single person on board gone without a trace. That video is on screen right now. Watch it next.